Welcome to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White, the real dragon slayer, author and entrepreneur sales coach. Tune in weekly for human conversation about business and sales. Enjoy business expert interviews, educational episodes, and virtual cuppas with entrepreneur business owners. So grab yourself a cuppa and enjoy. Here is your host, Jules White.
Welcome everybody to the Human Conversation. Well, I know I say this every time, but I'm really excited to talk to my guests, but this lady, for me, is a massive inspiration. So I'm very, very excited to find out more about her journey and her story. Let me tell you who she is. She is Emma Heathcote-James, and she is the founder and the owner of Little Soap Company. Welcome, Emma.
Thank you. Hello, it's good to be with you.
It's so exciting. I just was saying to Emma before we actually came on air to record, I really don't like to massively research my guests because then I think it makes for a much better conversation. So look, we're going to start right at the beginning. So my first question, Emma, what did you want to be when you left school?
Genuinely, I had no idea what I wanted to do. So I was at quite a high-flying all-girls school. I wasn't high-flying, but I was a girl. And I was in the bottom set for everything. So I kind of went through my school days feeling like the thickie, genuinely, and just had no conception that we were probably in the top 2% of kind of the education system. So it was a real shame. And always felt that I was going to be I hadn't got a clue. So I got caught up in the wave to go to university. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I applied from everything from social work to pastoral care to theology because I really liked my theology teacher, my RE teacher, and theology sounded like an ology. My gran didn't know what it was, so it sounded like a good thing. It was an ology, it was great. And I ended up going to Birmingham University. I got in through clearing because I was a thickie. I would never have got in with the grades. I went in through clearing, did that for 3 years, loved it because it was debating. So I love an argument and I love it. So that was all good. And then at the end of the degree, it was like everyone was going and getting proper jobs. Some were going to be vicars and some were going to be teachers. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. So my partner at the time was a teacher. So that felt like the right thing. So I applied to do a teaching degree or teaching conversion. But my thesis, the final dissertation, I wrote on the spread of angelic experience in the UK. And it just went mental. So I was in every broadsheet, even Cosmopolitan. This research just went. It was the first academic research into visionary angelic experiences. It was just a look rather than a judgment thing. Wow. So it made the theology department look really cool. So I was offered a bursary to stay on and do a master's. So of course I did, because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And then I stayed on and did a PhD. And during that PhD, I ended up doing the BBC Everyman programme, was done around the work, which I ended up researching. Then I ended up presenting. And then I ended up doing a book on it, which I ended up plagiarizing myself. So I never got the PhD because the book was published before the viva for the PhD. So I'm not a doctor. So, it's funny, all of the crossroads that we have. So yeah, I think probably now I can say I know what I want to do in my 40s, but up until then I had no clue.
It's so fascinating listening to you. So there's a few things I pick up on. You've referred to yourself, at least I would say 2 or 3 times, that you were a thickie, Emma. So I just want to put that out there to our listeners.
I wasn't an A grade student. I haven't got a single A for any exam. And I think that's really important because there were so many high flyers at school. Yeah. And I never ever, if it was me having my own business, and we all giggle about it, no one would have thought that.
No, and I think also I now have a 15-year-old son who is going right through this whole school process. Yeah. And I have to tell you that the creativity side of children, I don't believe that we really investigate that, bring it out, look at what they love. You clearly had a real love for what you did, which is why you excelled in it. Yeah. So isn't that a case in point,
Yeah, amazing. Like that. We all have a giggle at home. We've got a 15-year-old son, exactly the same. And it's like, I just look and feel so sorry, because how can you decide when you're 15, he wants to be a pilot. At least he knows what he wants to do. I haven't got a clue, not a clue. But you're right, the creativity side, it's like, it's winging it. We can all wing it if we try.
yeah, totally. And I don't know, I don't think you're old enough to remember, but when I was young, there was an advert on television with Maureen Lipman, Now, Maureen Lipman was a really well-known actress.
Yeah, I remember.
Do you remember her? And she did the BT advert, and she answered. Do you remember this one? I know you do from your expression. And she answers the phone to her son, who kind of reports in a very downtrodden way that he hasn't done very well in his exams. And he said he's got an something ology. I can't even remember which one. And she went, "You've got an ology?"
Exactly, that was it. I got ology.
And it was so funny when you said that, because that's the first thing I thought of was, she's got an ology. She did amazing. But look, I think how amazing the things that kind of, as you say, came off you doing and choosing that subject.
Yeah,
so,
and I think something to add to that is, I was all set to go and do English because I loved English, I loved reading, I really loved writing. Writing was one thing that I did really. I've always done thousands of journals every year. I'd write down every night how terrible life was or how great it was. And one thing, that RE teacher who I really, really adored, still do, she turned around and said, if you do English, Emma, you'll be a very little fish in a very big pool. If you did theology or RE, you've probably got 28 in the year and you've got a potential to be a bigger fish there. And that was like, I don't want to be a little fish. Yes. So it's really interesting. And then, of course, I start the soap business and I'm a tiny little fish. So it's been swimming upriver to try and get, into that little pool to be a big. So it's really interesting of how you can, how we see things, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And also look at the impact of having a great teacher behind you.
Oh, totally. You never forget the ones. You never forget the terrible ones, but you never forget.
Well, it's really funny because I loved English and I've always been good at writing. I love writing. I wrote a book, obviously. Yeah. Now, my English teacher I was absolutely petrified of my English teacher. I mean, genuinely scared of this man. He was horrible. But actually, he taught me how to write. He taught me how to understand English. And that's why I can now punctuate and I know my grammar. And okay, some people say that's not so important today, but it will always be important to me. And it's great, So you're right. Whether you love them or hate them, sometimes these teachers have a very big impact, don't they?
Do. And one of my bugbears, and it's one of those things that people just roll their eyes at, whenever we're advertising in the business, I always want a handwritten letter, because you can tell so much about a person just in a very short paragraph.
I left school at 16 because I wanted to work, and I said to my mum, what shall I do? She said, right, you write 50 letters. That's what she said to me. And I wrote 50 handwritten letters to all sorts of employers in the area. Mm-hmm. And I got 3 job offers. And I worked at NatWest. That's where I went for my very first job. But the point is, I think this is just such a lovely thing that we've almost lost doing now, isn't it? This writing a letter, how lovely is that?
But it's the same with sales. How many touches, how many people do you have to contact to get one sale? That was like the best advice from your mom, because you never think, would you? You think, well, of course everybody wants to employ me, but 50, wow.
I know, it was a lot, wasn't it? I was probably too many, but I got 3 job offers and then I had a choice, which is just, that's life, isn't it?
Yeah.
So I want to know what happens next then to Emma. You've done this program.
It was an out-of-house BBC production, and the director, Norman Hull, was really quirky. He was so creative, and they absolutely went to him, wanting him to direct it. And long story short, we won an RTS award. He won an RTS award. I joined in that week. And it was such an unusual documentary. We watched it the other night, actually. We found the tape of it. And he did an amazing job. And we interviewed loads of the case studies. It was really easy research that I had for the masters, and for the original thesis, because everyone else was going out finding case studies. I just got in the papers and sort of gave the journalist a nice story and said, is it okay if you just put our PO box in? So all the letters just landed on our doorstep. So it was very full, and we had sackfuls. And even when the first book came out, we then had more sackfuls of, I don't agree with that, but I had this kind of experience. Does that count? So the program happened, carried on working there, ended up totally through the back door into broadcast research. Did documentaries, worked for several production companies. So I've never actually had a real job. I worked for the BBC for a short time, was on their payroll, but apart from that, I've always been freelance. So learning HR now with the real business has just been, I've never, it's and having to work out salaries, taking tax off. Everything's very, very different. I worked in TV for about 10, 12 years whilst writing the books. The book came out about the research. It was like a layman's book. bedtime kind of table book. Then we wrote another one, then I wrote another one, then I wrote another one. So there was 4 books, which was, back then the Mind Body Spirit section in bookshops was like a sort of dusty corner in Waterstones.
Yeah.
So again, it was trying to rejuvenate an area and turn it into something a bit sexy, which hopefully we had a bit of an impact on, and we had an amazing audience, and they sold a crazy amount. So that was nice. We still get royalties every year from them now, which is just amazing. It was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, Angels always going to be popular, aren't they?
Yeah. So tell me the story about. Well, tell me the next thing. You've obviously been freelance for a long time. You did a little bit of
freelance. Ended up, you know what it's like being freelance, and it's fun and it's nice having a lovely hotel and going around the country and the world, but it gets tiring. And I bought this beautiful cottage in the Cotswolds, and I was never there, and I was slowly renovating it up, and I wasn't there to project manage it, and the sink went in the wrong place, and this happened, and then the bathroom fork, fell through, and so much went wrong, and I wanted to be there. I realized actually I'm quite a home bird. So I made this decision one New Year's Eve, as I'm likely to do, just snap decision, and that's it, we follow it. And I was going, right, that's it, I'm not going to take any more contracts on unless they're in like a 10-mile radius, which, living in the North Cotswolds, there's not many TV contracts in a 10-mile radius. So I ended up taking work down at Cheltenham Film Studios. Then I ended up running the Gloucestershire Media Group, which looked after all of the media professionals in the area, and then spread more down to the southwest. There was a design forum that I did some work with. Absolutely loved it. So that was more kind of PR and looking after other creatives, because creatives are good at being creative, but they're not very good at running a business. So that was probably something that sparked something in me of like, well, I am quite creative and I'm learning how people are running a business. And then I just wanted something I could call my own. And that was where the soap accidentally happened. So it was never a long-term plan. It was just, I loved hobbies. I loved doing things with my hands. I loved making things.
Yeah.
And genuinely, and I've always made face packs and this, that, and the other. That was just the norm.
Yeah.
The little, well, naked soap as it was back then was born. Purely because Granny died. She always used to bring soap, give us soap. So as a family, we always had soap in the bathroom, whatever. Gran would come back off a holiday, give us a brown bag with some soap in. Great present, we'd use it, never discuss it. Gran died, Mom was clearing out her bedroom, opened up the double wardrobe, and behind her clothes there was so much soap. I mean, so stashes of it, so much. And I think her friends used to give her florists and stuff, so there was a lot of soap. But she always used the pure natural stuff, which I never stopped and questioned, because it was just, you just don't talk about it, do you? You don't.
It's part of your life, isn't it?
Yes,
she's a part of your life. It's the norm for you.
It was just a family norm.
Yeah.
So I took some back to the cottage. I used some. Then we had the incident with the bathroom floor falling in when they were just meant to be redoing the bathroom, and I don't know what happened there. So I had no bathroom for probably about 6 weeks, because it was all wattle and daub, and we had to do it all properly, and it was all a big mess. So during that time, the church up next door said, look, you can use our outdoor toilet, here's the key. But the graveyard, it was in the Doomsday Book, this church, it was so freaky. I just stopped drinking at 4 o'clock. Refused to go to the toilet until like morning daylight. And then all the neighbours were really lovely, and they set up this rota for me that I could go and have a shower at their house. You know what? You learn so much about your neighbours when you're stood in their bathroom, because normally you use their downstairs loo. It's not a thing. So when you're stood in their bathroom, you see what they use. And like, the one lady down the road had terrible psoriasis, and she was using, a very well-known cheap shower gel brand. I was thinking, oh God, I wouldn't use that. We never use liquid soap in the house. Just never did. So I think that's interesting. And then I'd turn up with my bar of brand soap, and people would go, oh, bless you, you use soap. Well, that's very old fashioned. And I'm thinking, God, I'm the anomaly. It's not everybody else using liquid. So that was a big turning point. And then it was only when Gran's stashes dwindled about 3 years later, Mom phoned up and said, I'm having a bit of a moment, there's none left, like down to the last bar. And I'm just a bit grumpy going, oh God, I have to pay for it now. Went into a well-known supermarket, and of course, you look back then at the soap counter, it was so dull and dreary. It was all, very old-fashioned, tar soap, see-through glycerin soaps, beauty bars. There was nothing organic. There was nothing pure and natural. I think that's a bit odd. Never even considered that. And, that question arose, which is the one question I kick myself daily of why did I have to ask that question, is why isn't there something pure in the supermarkets? We should have choice.
Yeah.
And that was where it all went downhill.
Oh my God.
Downhill from there.
Well, you say downhill, but I'm loving listening to this story because I'm thinking, oh my goodness, this is your grandma's legacy.
Absolutely adored her. And my one regret is she's not here today, because she was so proud of everything we did.
Yeah.
So even when I was at university, you know, we all lived in Birmingham, you know, I would go and pick Granny up and she'd come with me to hand papers in, and everyone would call her Gran. So she'd get out the lift and they go, hello, Gran. She'd go, hello. So, you know, she was so proud, and she would be there, you know, she'd be there in Waitrose pulling our stuff to the front.
Yeah, it's almost like she left the stash for a reason, you know?
Totally. I think it was hidden from Grandpa more than anything.
So how did you discover how to make soap? Did she leave the recipe or?
No, do you know what? That would be the best story. That would be the best story to go, and do you know what? And we found this booklet, and she never made it herself. She didn't. I wish she had it done. No, so I then, we went around buying it in supermarkets, realizing there's nothing quite like it. And it was a lot of kind of hit and miss. Sometimes if you went to a village fete or a church, you know, bring and buy sort of thing.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get a soap maker there, but then you hadn't got a regular dealer because you didn't know where they were, or, you know, websites didn't exist back then. And we say this to our son, this was 12 years ago.
Yeah.
You couldn't buy online, you know, it just wasn't what it was. Google didn't exist. It was Ask Jeeves and it was Yahoo. So it was so different. It was a totally different world. So yeah, these days you wouldn't have a problem. So yeah, I go to farmers markets and I found a couple of people who made nice stuff there, but then you go the next month and they weren't there. So yeah, we hadn't got a regular family dealer, which was a bit of an issue. So I thought, liking making things, I managed to find a couple of books in a charity shop, because again, Amazon didn't exist. You couldn't just buy a soap making book, and it wasn't a thing over here. So all of the books tended to be American. So it was all peanut oil, it was canola oil, it was stuff that we didn't have over here. And then they'd call it store cupboard ingredients. So I managed to find a recipe that had, I think it was vegetable oil, I think it was rapeseed oil, sunflower oil maybe, made this soap. It was the most crumbly, horrible, ghastly soap ever. And you've got to leave it for a month anyway. And during the month it was curing, it was just falling apart. Even smelled beautiful, smelled absolutely lovely with essential oils, but it was just crumbles. So I played around with more recipes. It wasn't the best. It was nothing I was proud of, but I handmade paper, because I got into handmaking paper. So I'd wrap it up so it looked beautiful and I'd give it to neighbours, but it would never end up on their sink because it just fell apart. So it was a complete nightmare. And then this one day I went to the village fete next door, the pub next door to where I was living, in the cottage that was now pretty much kind of renovated. And there was a lady selling soap down the bottom. And this is where everything comes together. So there were some lads in the village, and, you know, it was everyone's village front room. It was an old National Trust owned pub. It was beautiful. And I went over just to go and see the neighbours and have a glass of wine. And Tipper, he used to tip the cows over when he got tipsy. Tipper was stood at the gate and he said, "Oh, Emma, I'm glad you've come. We've been waiting for you." And I'm like, "Right." And he said, "We were wondering, can we go up your back garden and get your wheelbarrow?" And I'm like, "Tipper, go and grab it. What do you want it for?" Now you're asking. There's a lady down there selling bar soap. And of course, there was this big joke in the village that I was making a bit of soap myself and it was terrible, but I'd also gone around everybody's bathrooms with my bar of soap that everyone thought was totally weird for a 30-year-old woman. So I'm like, "Oh, ha, Tipper, that's funny." And then I said, "Do you know what? I might just go and have a chat to her because she might be able to help me." Now, had he not have said that, I would never have gone down to the bottom of the orchard. You know, I was going to go and have a glass of wine. Went down, met Jane, the first real life soap maker I'd ever met, and looking at her stuff, she was selling it out of a horse bucket for £1.50. So I bought 4 bars off her. It wasn't crumbling, it was completely like a brick. Really, really jealous. And I'm going, "How do you do this? You know, I've never been able to get it like this." And she's saying, "Well, what oils are you using?" I'm like, "Well, canola and sunflower and rapeseed and this, that, and then vegetable oil." And she's going, she said, "No, collie palm is the best soap, in my opinion." Okay, "Well, collie palm, what's that?" So it's coconut, olive and palm. And she said, "It's just so simple." And I'm going, "Where do I get coconut?" Well, now, of course, you can buy coconut oil in the supermarket.
Yeah.
It's mega expensive, but you can. Back then you couldn't. It was, you know, it was something you couldn't get. I go, "Where do I buy?" And pure olive, where do I get that from? And she said, "Oh, I use this brochure here. I'll give it, you know, give you the name of it." So I phoned up, got the brochure posted out. It sounds archaic, doesn't it?
Well, that's how it was.
That I started making soap, and it was like it stuck together, it worked, it was the most amazing soap. And of course I bought some off her, hadn't I? So that night went back to my new bathroom, used it in the shower, and that was the light bulb moment of like, this should be on the shelves of Waitrose.
Yeah.
She was shutting up shop, so to speak. She'd been doing it for a long time. It'd been a hobby business. She was going over to Spain. I bought the recipes off her, and that was how Little Soap began.
Oh.
Well, Naked Soap it was back then. So Naked,
yeah.
and then we had to change the name.
And did you have to change the name just because somebody else was using it, or?
It was one of those, be careful what you call it. So there was so many signs of it's not the right name. So back then, I do like sound like grandma, back then Firewall didn't exist. And my next door neighbour did loads of statistic work for guide dogs. And I had a little guide dog puppy that I used to have them for a year before they went to guide dog school. And she'd gone into work and she said, Emma, I can't get your website up. And it just won't come up at work. And because it was a big organisation, they'd got a firewall and the word naked was being searched. And then you'd also got, like, was it Yahoo Images came out before Google? I can't remember, but some image, if you put in naked soap, you've got like soap stars naked.
Yes.
Great. So, pawn shops were coming up, which wasn't great, especially, if I was thinking of going to supermarket buyers and them sort of, finding, pat not great. So,
wow.
Yeah, I carried on with Naked though, because I thought it was really clever.
Yeah.
However, the National Trust turned around and said, we would have your soap. It's just not great with our older generation. I think it's just a bit risky. So, things happen for a reason. Then 18 months in, I got a cease and desist letter from a big company, KMI. They had obtained a trademark, a disused trademark. So it's not like I haven't tried. I tried to trademark it myself, but couldn't because it was deemed descriptive. They'd found this old trademark. They got a massive team of lawyers on it. And they said, you need to stop using the word as of the 31st of December. It was the 22nd. So it was just like my world caved in. It was only a hobby business. I had a real job, but this was like something that had legs. So yeah, went to the patent attorney. I think it was like 3rd of January. And walked in and she's giggling and I'm just going, it's really not funny. This is all my kind of savings has gone into this. I was doing farmers markets and I was in a few local chains around the Cotswolds. And she said, no, it's just really funny. Stella McCartney, who just walked out in front of us, and I'm going to Dad, that's Stella McCartney. He's like, no, it's not. I said, it is. So Stella had a problem with nude. So she'd had Stella nude and I got Naked Soap, and the patent attorney's just going, what's going on? What happened over Christmas? So yeah, so she had two nakeds to deal with. So
I love that.
The real crossroads of, do I just turn around and go, do you know what? It's a big world. You're playing with big boys. Let's knock it on the head. Or do I just change the word and carry on? And I changed the word and carried on.
Right. So I've got a question. What made you make that decision?
Do you want the honest story?
Yeah.
For months, I bored everybody talking of nothing else, going, what can I change it to? And the problem is class 2 that soap sits in is the most crowded category. So if you imagine walking into House of Fraser, every franchise is probably in class 2. So everything from nail varnish to toothpaste to makeup to cosmetics to soap. They've got massive marketing departments working for them, coming up with brand names. So every single name I came up with was already taken. And I'm going, well, obviously I wanted to brand. I need a proper brand. I need to trademark it. I'm not going to do this again and just have a descriptive word. It's too dangerous. And yeah, probably, I think it was, I lost track, 3 months, 6 months. It was a long time deciding what to do because I had that long to carry on. We managed to wrangle it. We could carry on trading until that time. Even if it wasn't taken as a trademark, the .com or the the .co. So I went down to see a friend in Plymouth, and she said, she was just sick to the back teeth of me, I think, after a few hours, and said, come on, get in the car, I've got a plan. And I'm going, okay. So we went to the Hoe, and I'm sure he's still there to this day. Gypsy Akora's got a little shop in the Barbican, and we went in. And I think she paid £15. And I remember I had a green jumper on. It's just, isn't it funny memories? I had nothing on saying Naked Soap Company whatsoever. It was me in a green jumper, went in, and he said, would you like a palm reading? Would you like a tarot? Or would you like crystal ball? And I thought, well, tarot I could do myself. Palm freaks me out because I've got a really short lifeline. And I said, but crystal ball, I've never had one of those. That sounds great. So he said, okay, crystal ball. He said, put your hands on the ball. And he said, think of the question. And when you're ready, just bring your hands to the bottom. So of course I'm like this. And he starts looking into the crystal ball, and he goes, can you, he was looking in it like this. And I'm thinking, he's getting a magnified view of my palm. So he's doing a cheeky palm reading. So I'm just really cross. So I squidge my hands really tight, thinking I'm going to get my money's worth here. Really tight squidge like this. And he's going, I can't see nothing. I can't see nothing. And I'm thinking, yeah, because I'm squidging my hands. And he goes, all I can see is red tape and legals. Yeah. And I'm like, And he starts spitting, and he goes, there's a gypsy hex, there's a hex on this, there's a hex on a word, there's a word, isn't there? Oh, that was a moment. Wow. And he starts spitting, and he goes, I don't understand none of this, I don't understand it, but you need to sign a bit of paper. And I went, right, okay, I will. And I went out, and we had Moule and Frites and a bottle of Sauvignon. And I was like, that is it, that is the moment, we're going to carry on, I'll sign the cease and desist, we'll change the name, haven't got a clue what I'll change it to. Went to the patent attorney that next week and said, look, we'll sign it, but I don't know what I'm going to call the business. And she just said, and I still credit Lucy to this day, she said, you want to call it something like, it's just like a little soap company, isn't it? And I go, that's cute. And I said, but she said, you won't be able to trademark it. She said, unless it becomes bigger. And the .co.uk was there, the com was there, and the company's house, it was free. So that's we amazing. Did it there and then. So that was why it was called Little Soap Company.
That was so meant to be as well, wasn't it? When you think of that.
I'm such a believer that things are meant to be.
Yeah, so am I. So am I, very much. It's interesting, isn't it, the whole journey of patents, trademarking, you know, been there and done this, because I had Truly Madly Baby, which was my Dragon's Den business. That was all about, we trademarked that, and that was really tough because it was Truly Madly. So that was one of the, you know, it was, if you remember, the song was by Savage Garden.
That was it.
Was. And we had a photo frame with Truly Madly Deeply on it. And I said to my husband at the time, who's obviously the ex-husband now, I said to him, what should we call this business? And he just bought the photo frame and he went, look, like this. And I said, oh, Truly Madly Baby, like this. And that was how that was born. Yeah. So these names are wonderful stories about how they're born, you know, they're really good.
Totally.
So, because I could obviously talk to you all day, I want to get in now the part of the story where we go from the kitchen table to the supermarkets, because, you know, I think for many listeners, if they're in this retail space, that's probably their biggest aspiration. But my goodness me, is it a minefield?
Be careful what you wish for. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I knew you'd say that.
Monster, totally different monster.
Yeah, tell us a few sort of top tips or just observations about that journey.
I think it's tenacity and it's patience, and I think it's having to be like a dog with a bone. Unfortunately, I've got those three things, which I never knew I had because I'd never needed them before. And I don't like people saying no. So if someone said no to me, I'd go back and go, but why? Which, you know, is incredibly annoying. But I genuinely believe in the product, and it's a really good product. And, you know, it's not about you not having space on your shelf. It's about my product's really good to take someone else out and put us in there.
Yeah.
So it's not taking no for an answer. And then the product has to then obviously be good enough to stay the long term. And that's something I hadn't really considered, because I was just so full of myself that it was a good product. I never ever considered that, you know, you could go in 6 weeks, you're delisted, and that's mega. And we've never been delisted from anywhere, which is, you know, quite unusual. We now know. And we're the ones going, we'd actually like to take these 2 lines out and we'd like to replace them with something that we think could do better, and that's better for us and for you. So the whole journey is, I think tenacity is a really good word for a business.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's a very important word. And that belief as well, the belief that this is really something good, and being able to translate that value to the supermarkets. Because for them, you know, people who may not know this, a space on a shelf is money to them. You know, so everything is calculated on that basis, isn't it, in so many ways.
So, you know, if, for example, you know, I went into Waitrose last night, and we've had customers in Asda, all the shelves are bare at the moment with coronavirus, and this ridiculous panic buying. And those empty shelves are costing them money. So all of those companies that have got empty spaces will be fined, if the space is empty for a long time, because it's costing money. So it's all about rate of sale. It's about the weight of purchase. There's so much. It's not about, is it a nice product and is Emma a nice person, I want to put it on the shelf. It's the data. It's data driven, and more and more retailers are data driven now. So that product has got to be exactly right.
Yes, exactly. There's so much more to understand about going into these bigger suppliers.
I'm not trying to put people off. I've done it and I knew nothing. But the promotional side, the key is get people in who understand it. I struggled for too long, absolutely like a rabbit in headlights, and phoning up buyers going, I'm really sorry, can you just help me with this? And I had very patient buyers at the start who were lovely and handheld, and they weren't used to dealing with a founder owner. They were used to having reps from P&G and J&J coming out. So I was very fortunate that sort of making friends and getting sort of help from the powers that be. But now the team I've got, they can do it standing on their head, on one hand. So get people on board quickly who know more than you do.
There was an element of human connection that got you going with this, because clearly the buyers made a connection with you, your passion and the value of the product.
To me, it was this absolute no-brainer of like, I'm walking into Waitrose and you've not got organic soap. Really? Really? So it ticked a lot of boxes for the retailers. And then obviously for Sainsbury's, they're massively into sustainability. And then Asda realised there's nothing on their shelves. They came and said, could you do something for us? So it works for everybody. And to me, that is a real ethical business, like a genuine ethical business. And it's not that I sat down and thought, I want to create an ethical business. How am I going to go about it? It's just naturally happened. And I think anyone who has a business employing people or giving a product to another human being, we've got a responsibility to do it properly. And in terms of advice, one thing my dad's always said is, he always said, do things properly. And if there's a knock at the door, you're not going to wet yourself. You make sure your tax is correct. You make sure. I would never release a product if we hadn't got all the paperwork, in line beforehand. So if there is a knock at the door, we can go, here you go. And do you know what? You have to be able to sleep at night. And that's the bottom line.
Yeah, definitely. Sleeping at night is imperative, obviously.
It's an R age.
Yeah, it is. And I wanted to just also ask about the kind of scale up side of the business, because obviously if you started making it on your kitchen table, which is ultimately what it was like.
I found that stressful. Honestly, if only I knew what it was like.
But how did you then move into having it produced en masse? Because I think that must be a massive thing of letting go and it changing, really. The dynamics must change.
Yeah, and for a control freak, that's really hard. Yeah. Every bar I touched, and So how did that happen? So with the trademark issue and having to change name, I was a member of WIRE, which was Women in Rural Enterprise, because I was out in the sticks. There was nobody else really I could talk to, and I was really lonely. And I will put my hand up, I was really lonely. I'm a people person. I was at home making soap, on the phone selling it, and didn't really have anyone to talk to. So I joined WIRE very early on and realised that the local WIRE to me was like a 45-minute drive away in Worcester. And I phoned up and went, I'm not being funny, I've just spent £40 on this annual membership and the local WIRE is 45 minutes away. That's going to be like, a whole morning out for me. And she was brilliant. Sarah at the end of the phone turned around and said, well, set up your own then.
Love that.
I was like, okay. So I did. So I set up my own. I thought, well, obviously Breakfaston is a very tiny village and there's not many of us. So I set it up in Broadway because I love Broadway. And then I set up another in Shipping Camden, which was sort of the other side of the hill. And I thought, where would I like to go? Because I was at home the whole time, I just picked the two nicest hotels that did the nicest tea and coffee. And that was where our WIRE groups were once a month. So twice a month, because I did two, I had two different sets of people. And some of them are lifelong friends now that, we all started out together at the same time doing, similar things. So that was absolutely terrific. So yes, networking is imperative, and getting a support network is really important.
Yeah.
So the trademark thing happened. Phoned Sarah at WIRE going, oh my God, this is just awful. I've got this trademark, I'm going to have to change everything, everything from the website to Facebook to, the banners on the farmers' stalls that I did. I said, this is going to be about 15 grand. And I just had 4,000 boxes delivered because it was good to order in bulk. 4,000 was a lot back then.
Yeah.
And she just said, Emma, this is brilliant. And I'm going, oh my God, did you hear what I said? And she went, no, this is brilliant. You're going to have a story. and she said, every business needs a story. And I remember putting the phone down and thinking, thanks a bunch, that's supportive. But she was so right, because I did have a story. And after we got out the other end, I was asked to go and speak at lots of conferences and lots of other things. And it doesn't matter whether you're knitting jumpers or making chutney or making soap, this could happen to anybody.
Yeah.
So I was asked to go and speak at a conference at the, I think it was Harper Adams. I think it was a Wire conference actually, talking about the kind of the glass ceiling, or the ceiling actually, that you have as an artisan producer, and there is a cap. There's only so much you can do, and I could make 40 grand a year, and that was pretty much every hour of the day. I couldn't make any more money myself, because I was getting up in the morning, supermarket, all of the kind of like just the wholesale that I was just doing to local shops and to hotels and things. I was making it. I was having to do soap schools just to bring quick cash in, and if I started employing other people hand making it, the margins are all different, and it wouldn't be. So I was just saying, it's really hard as an artisan business. How do you scale? And there was a lady in the audience who was dressed differently to everybody else. She was suited and booted. Everyone else was kind of farmers' wives and sort of jeans and kicking back, kind of countryside casual. And Kay in the audience kept putting a hand up and asking really pertinent questions. And she ended up by going, so Emma, you're sitting here saying you want to make soap accessible to all, which was the strap line, it still is. Yeah. And she said, but you're not in any of the big retailers. And I go, well, this is the problem. I just can't hand make. And, to take a factory on, it's just a different beast. And she said, but if you want genuinely, if that really is your aim and you really want to do that, why aren't you in Tesco's? And I said, oh, well, I'm actually in 8 Waitrose. This is a local hero. And I just hand deliver my soap, and Waitrose is more my brand. So I think it'd be Waitrose that I went for. And she was a Tesco buyer. So how foolish, what a twit did I look. But I stood by it, because I'm going, you know what, Tesco's isn't us. I'm a Waitrose girl. Anyway, she turned up at the house a week later. Then she came back another week with one of her colleagues. And she worked in, it doesn't exist anymore, she worked in the Tesco local department in Cardiff. And she gave me a contract for 40,000 bars. Now, she knew I needed to make 40,000 to get a contract with a factory. And she said, go and find a factory. Well, that's easier said than done. There's like hardly any. And that was the biggest gift anyone's, apart from my goddaughter and my son, the biggest gift I've ever had, because it was wow. So I went to 3 factories, and the factory that I liked the most was the people that I liked the most. And I got it made there. And again, even that, it was just like the changing the name issue. I just talked incessantly to people for about 2 months, just couldn't make a decision, which is really unlike me, because it was such a big crossroads. It was like, this is going to be life-changing if we do this. Yeah. And you're kind of like putting your house on the line. This is mega. Yeah. And there was a friend of mine, Jenny, and her husband came for dinner one night, and I think I just talked at them the whole night, and her husband doesn't really speak. And as he was putting his wife's coat on and we were saying goodbye, he was leant over and said, you're a fool if you don't take that. And I was like, oh, really? And he went, And he worked for a big company. And he said, people don't give you contracts like that. He said, you're an unknown person. It's a massive risk. So I phoned up, took the contract, went up to the factory, said, right, I want you to make this. They said, brilliant, and gave me an invoice. And I just looked at them, so I can't pay this now. And they said, well, we don't know who you are from Adam. And I'm going, but you've seen this orders from Tesco. And they said, but you need to pay it up front. And I'm going, well, I can't do that. And they said, well, what do you propose then? And I said, well, I propose that you make it. I send it into Tesco's. I wait for Tesco's to pay us, and then I'll pay you. I said, I'm tiny. How on earth can I pay you up front? And I think they just took pity and realised that they would get the money. And that was what got me off the springboard, because
that's amazing.
really lucky. And I think my absolute ignorance, that was.
And there is the tenacity. Yes. Right there, you know, and it's interesting because it was much smaller scale, but when I started Truly Madly Baby, I was looking for products that weren't on the high street that I could stock in my collection, because I wanted to feel different. So I was going to smaller UK suppliers. Sometimes they were importing from abroad, but I stayed in the UK, small order quantities. I had no credit with them, and I pleaded with them, and I said to them, this is going to be big, please help me and support me. They did, and then they were getting thousands, tens of thousands of pounds worth of business from me, by the second.
Everyone has to take a little risk, don't they? And I think people do business with people.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of customers, and you can tell who the genuines are, ones are, and straight away, we've had a few people buy loads of wholesale, and then it's been a dodgy credit card, and they've run off and stuck it on eBay. It's hideous.
Yeah.
But, people do business with people, and
I agree.
Yeah.
So tell me the just to finish off, because I know I could speak to you for hours. But just to finish off, what supermarkets are you currently in now?
So we are in Waitrose, Tesco's, Asda, Boots, Sainsbury's. We're about to go into Lloyd's Pharmacy. We're about to go into Superdrug. We're doing some work with them. There's another one, Amazon as well. Yeah.
Amazing. No, that's great. So you're in all of those supermarkets. What's the next place we're going to see them, or do you feel like that's now the coverage for you?
Oh no, we haven't even started. So I think it's all about volume for us. So we've not even started with export. That's a whole different ball game. And a lot of the retailers, we're in Ireland with some of them already. But yes, there's so much more that we can do. We've got big plans about Little Soap School. That's been pretty quiet the last 12 months. We've not done anything with it just because I've been growing the team. We have scaled massively. So yes, there's going to be things happening in the next 6 months or so with Little Soap School. So that'll be making a resurgence. So that's a separate business. That'll be quite exciting.
So just because you've mentioned it briefly, what is that exactly?
Oh, sorry, Little Soap School. We fling open the workshop doors of where we do all our kind of like R&D and development, and we teach people to make their own soap. And we get people just coming just to make soap and learn how it's done. And we get quite a few people from all over the world coming to learn because they want it as their own business. So
amazing.
It's good fun. It's good fun.
You've just done so many amazing things, Emma, and it's really inspirational to talk to you, and also think about what we've all talked about on this podcast, where we've gone from where you left school, where you started, not really knowing even what you wanted to do, to this amazing business that you now run, which is going to be a global success. There's no doubt
about that, but it keeps me busy.
What's the kind of exit plan from your perspective?
We were with the accountants last week, and they're saying, what are we looking at, 5 years or so? No, I'm having such a good time.
Yeah.
And it's while I get out of bed with fire in my belly, really excited, that's life, isn't it? And how blessed am I to have something that I get up every day and do that I love. And of course there's bad days, but we've all got this vision and this bigger aim, and so long as we have that, that's as long as I'll keep doing it. Because what will I do if I'm not? I'm a complete obsessive person, so I have to find something else to be totally obsessed about.
I understand your world.
It takes one to know one, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So last final saying, thoughts for the listeners. What do you want to leave us with, Emma? Oh
gosh, I think just don't give up. If you want something, it can be achieved. And I think we try and instill that in our son. It's you can have whatever you want, and sometimes it takes a lot of hard work, but you can have whatever you want.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it certainly runs in line with my dad's legacy of there is no such word as can't, because that's
well if you say you can't, you're right.
yeah, exactly. And any links to anything you've talked about will be in the narrative on this podcast, so you can connect with Emma if you would like to. But Emma, thank you so much for your time. I know you're so busy, and
it's great to sit down and have a cuppa with you.
Have a cuppa, yeah, that's it. And so it's lovely that you spent the time with us this morning, and I hope our listeners have really loved this podcast. I know I have, and also I hope you're inspired by this amazing lady and her tenacity and the journey that she's been on. Thank you for listening to The Human Conversation. We'll be back again very soon with another amazing episode. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, Stitcher, and also on SoundCloud. And this will be on YouTube, so you can watch us drinking tea together. But thank you, Emma, again. It's been absolutely brilliant.
It's really good to see you again. Take care.
Great to see you. And listeners, we will see you again really soon on The Human Conversation. Ta-da for now.
You've just been listening to the Human Conversation podcast with Jules White. To find out more about the other work that Jules does, please visit her website, www.liveitloveitsellit.co.uk. And if you enjoyed the podcast, then please do leave a rating and review on the platform you use to enjoy her show. Thanks for listening, and see you next time.